Hello. Hello, everyone. Good evening. How are you doing? Let's okay, maybe better. Good evening. Hello. If you're here, please say hello. Okay. I just got to go live. Hi, everyone. Hello. Good evening. How are you doing? Hey, Meg. How are you? Good evening. How y'all doing? Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you're here, please say hi. Say hi, please. Okay. Hey, Stella. Welcome, guys. Good evening. How are you doing? Good evening. Welcome. Please say hi if you're here. Hi, Meg. Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? Hi, Tarsha. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome. Okay. I am super excited about what we're talking about tonight. It's fun. So if you're joining us, just say hi. Say hi in the comments. Hey, Tony. Good evening. Hi, Curly. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Keisha. Hello, how are you all doing? Thank you for joining us tonight. And tonight, we're going to be talking about something that's not so common, something that people don't do as often as they should do. And there's a lot of misconception about not being able to buy properties without the bank and without having cash. So we're going to explore a lot of different options people have, we all have. These are all definitely legal options, right? There are definitely legal paperwork that we use for this kind of creative financing processes. So, yes, welcome on board. And for some, it might be a refresher. And for maybe most, it might be brand new. Who knows, right? But hey, I'm going to go ahead with the training. My name is Yinka Olumorin. Should I call it a training or a discussion? Okay. My name is Yinka Olumorin. I am a coach, a real estate investing coach on our beautiful platform, Acquire Real Estate. Done couple deals, of course, ranging from wholesaling to lease options to fix and flips, rentals, long-term rentals, short-term rentals, multifamily, new constructions. If that's what you're looking to do, you're in the right space. Good evening, everyone. Okay, I also invested my husband Dare, who is a licensed builder and does a lot of new construction, spec homes, custom homes, and helps our students with a lot of things that have to do with construction. So anything construction related, you get that help from him as a community member. Hi, just say hi if you're watching. All right, cool. And I am excited to be here as always. Please introduce yourself in the comments if you're here and let us know where you're from, what states you're in. Hi, Martin. How are you doing? Um, I'm gonna look again. You guys, I feel like coaching students, you guys need to let me know, like, why are you guys always showing up for free sessions? I know you guys give me clear, like, oh, it's free, but it's not, it's very, be honest, tell me in the comments why I keep seeing some of you guys here. Because it's like, you know, you should know this stuff, right? Okay. You're not tired of seeing my face like twice a week, twice a week, and then you see me on a Tuesday too. I'm happy to see you guys too. You guys definitely make me feel at home. So yes, thank you for introducing yourselves in the comments. I see Keisha from Baltimore, Maryland. Um, I see all of you guys. I see Stella. I see Martin. I see Tarsha. I see Tony. Tony says you provide great value. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. All right. Hopefully, we can make it fun as well. Okay. Real estate is fun. Money is fun, right? But when you start to do something that's truly yours, you kind of feel at ease. You feel great. You feel joy. You're happy that you're, for once, building your own thing, right? You're building your own portfolio, you're building your own life. You spend a lot of time building other people's businesses and their lives and putting money in their pockets. um how many of you guys feel like you're paid what you're worth right now? Maybe not a lot of people feel that way, like you get paid your true worth. That doesn't happen, but you can make it happen when you have your own thing. You can create that additional income, or actually just have that, create that exponential growth. It is a process, definitely, right? But it's better to start quickly and start the process, because it is a process. It's not magic, but it will happen. When people share their testimonials, it looks like magic, but there was a process behind it, right? So tonight we'll be talking about how to buy real estate or properties without using any banks. Why is this important? What is wrong with buying with a bank? And I say wrong because it's not like it's wrong, but it's not for everyone, right? There are definitely things you need to meet up with. You have credit requirements, and that might not work for someone who, let's say, is new. You're trying to build your credits for the first time. um, you really just started life, and it's not working for you, right? It would not work for someone with a brand new job. So if you just started working, like, let's say a year ago, sometimes they will require at least 2 years. But let's see a lot of different reasons why bank financing might not be um, feasible for everyone. Hey, Janaya, you're here. You're in Mississippi. I always had a passion for renovating homes and building generational wealth for the future. That's great to see you. And I think I spoke with you during the week. So keep up the good work. Roland says it's my first time. Welcome, Roland. Good to see you. Credit work history, credit score. According to Tony, yes, exactly. Work history, right? Credit score. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. So, what is wrong? What is wrong with bank financing? Credit requirements, right? What's your credit like right now? Not a lot of people have excellent credit scores, but oftentimes you need that to qualify for bank financing, right? So definitely there's that credit requirements. Another thing you would need for bank financing is that down payment requirements, oftentimes around 20 to 25%, except you're doing FHA. And with FHA, you definitely have to pay an additional amount monthly for that mortgage insurance, right? Because you're putting such a low amount down, and you end up paying more every month because of that. And that money doesn't go into your principal, right? So there's definitely a down payment requirement. Sometimes you get those down payment assistance and all of that, but eventually adds up to not be, the best return on your investment, right? So there's definitely that down payment requirement. There is also a lengthy approval process, which means it does take a while for the qualification process to go through. It does take a while, right? And it's definitely rigorous. Not every deal you come across can wait for that length of time. We've had people calling saying that they want to sell within a week, within 2 weeks. They're in a hurry, right? And with that, banks would not work. Also, there's also the debt to income ratio requirements, right? So you cannot qualify for a certain purchase price based on being below a certain annual income. So the lower your annual income, the lower the purchase price of property that you can qualify for. So, for instance, if you wanted to move to, let's say, a 2,000 square foot property and maybe your family is growing, unfortunately, you're not making that income where you can actually afford properties that have those kind of square footages because they are higher in price. And so it kind of caps you with purchase price. And definitely it doesn't sound like something that an investor would want to do. Like you don't want to be capped on what to buy and what not to buy. So it doesn't make sense for an investor to do bank financing. Right. Then that also limits you. If you're an investor, you want to be able to buy properties year in, year out. You want to be able to buy more than 10 properties in a year if you want. Right. But with the bank financing for a lifetime, you're probably capped around 10. If you're lucky, maybe up to 15. But usually around 10 is what they cap you at. You cannot have more than 10 loans or mortgages for your entire portfolio. Right. So that is a big deal because you want to be able to buy properties for as many times as you want throughout the year, for as long as you want. You want to continue to build equity. Every year you want to be able to add on to your portfolio, however amount of properties you want. So the bank definitely limits you with that. Hi Olayinka, I see you here. She says hello everyone. Right. So the loan limits makes it really hard for banks to work for real estate investors like the traditional banks. Okay. And then you also have the W 2 preference, meaning that if you don't have a W 2 income, it can be extremely hard to qualify for a mortgage. Okay. It can be, and the terms might not be as great as a W 2. So banks want to see that you're making consistent income. They don't care if you're making $1 million the first month, and then the second month you made no money, the third month you made no money, fourth month you made no money, and that's all the money you made. And then maybe somewhere around August you made 10,000, right? So you made $1,010,000. They would rather give that loan to someone who makes $10,000 every month or $5,000 every month. They want to see that consistency. They don't care about like the total amount you're making or your gross or nets. But there's certain products that help with that. But generally speaking, banks don't like non W 2 income. Okay. All right. And also, there is also a big one right here, the property condition. If you're trying to fix up a property, it's run down, all of that, they don't like that because and you already know with the FHA requirements, like how they go into a property, and it has to be, it must not have peeling paint. There are like a bunch of requirements. The railings have to be good. Basically, the finish has to be good, right? So most times banks would not even finance properties that need work. That's not their spec. Okay. So you have to understand what the difference is between bank traditional financing and also differently from the real estate investor financing. Okay. Then another thing with banks is that the terms are not flexible. Terms are not flexible. You can't go into a bank and negotiate 5% and say, what if I do this? Can you do this with the terms? It's hard to negotiate those kind of things with the bank. They just pretty much give you what's terms your profile fits under, right? And there's not a lot of negotiation that can happen, or flexibility, and that's very different for with creative financing. So this is really what happens with the bank. Imagine this is you, and let's say you had no credit, or maybe you didn't have a good credit history. You don't have a good credit history. Maybe something happened with your credits. Maybe it was hacked. Um, Maybe it's due to your fault, or no fault of yours. Your credit score is low, or maybe you're just slowly building, but you want to really start to buy properties as an investor, right? Even though you feel like you're not quite there yet, but you want to be able to just even get started, right? So let's say that's you. Your credit isn't perfect, or it's not there yet, and you're not able to qualify for bank financing. Maybe you don't have all the items that we listed that the banks would need you to have, or maybe you don't even have money. Maybe you don't have that 20 to 25% down payments, right? And that's where creative financing comes in. Okay. So that's why creative financing comes in. With creative financing, all those requirements you really don't need. So the credit requirements isn't there, the down payment requirements isn't there. You don't need a lengthy approval process. You can close on a creative financing deal within a week if title is clear. So you still need to go through title search and all of that. Just make sure you do that, right? You can close within a week. So if a seller says, I'm only going to sell this property to someone who can close really fast, then you're the best candidate for that property, right? And also, you don't need that W 2. Even if you didn't have a W 2 job, you can still do creative financing. You can do creative financing regardless of your debt to income ratio. So, how much are you paying in bills versus how much you're earning? No one cares about that when it comes to creative financing. If you're just joining us, please tell us where you're from, tell us your name in the comments. We'd like to meet you or know you. Okay. So, you also don't have a cap as to how many creative financing deals you can do in a year, in 2 years. No one caps your debt. You can keep going. You can do creative financing for properties in any condition. Okay. So it doesn't have to be a clean property, it doesn't have to be a specific property, right? Any property. You can do creative financing for any property. Okay. And also, you can negotiate terms with sellers. We do that all the time. Make a lot of money with negotiations. So you can negotiate when it comes to creative financing. Okay. So let's assume this is a seller who is looking to move. Okay. They want to move to another state. They want to sell this property. They do not want to be a landlord. They don't want to pay two mortgages. Because when you move, you haven't sold the property you live in or you lived in, then the property is going to be on the market. So you're going to keep paying that mortgage, and you're going to have to pay rent or pay another mortgage where you're moving to. So in this case, they don't want to do that. It's going to be a hassle. They can't even afford another mortgage. They have to move. It's a job requirement. They have to sell and not be a landlord. And they currently owe around $100,000 in mortgage. They currently owe around $100,000 in mortgage. They want to sell. The value of the property is 110. So you guys, what do you think is going to be a problem right here? If the value of the property is 110, they owe $100,000. What do you think might be the challenge in selling this kind of property? Because the thing with creative financing is it's not only good for you because you don't have a credit, you don't have a work history, or you don't have a lot of things that the bank requires. It also helps sellers. So it's helping a buyer and it's helping a seller. So a seller that cannot sell traditionally can also sell through creative means, right? To you, who's a buyer who's looking to buy creatively. So what do you think is a problem? Yes. So Tony says after fees, they would have to pay to sell the house. You are correct. That is true. If you only have 100K in equity, You're a little bit over leveraged there, right? So if they had to go into closing right now, Tasha says not enough equity, they might have to come out of pocket. Exactly. So what are the kind of things they have to come out of pocket with? Why can't they just sell for 110 and say goodbye and maybe even make that 10K off of the equity? What other fees do they have to think about for closing? What is the biggest of these fees that has to come from the equity of the property or out of pocket? It has to come from somewhere. What's the biggest that they have to cough out? If they were selling traditionally, let's say they listed a property on Zillow with an agent and someone puts in an offer, what kind of costs would they be responsible for? Any ideas? Thank you so much, Tony. That is true. Agent fees, closing costs. So agent fees, exactly, Kiki. They have to pay a realtor. The realtor fee is the biggest. Around 6% commission. Yes, Tasha says commission and title fee. Exactly. So you got to pay commissions, you got to pay title transfer fees, you got to pay closing costs, and a bunch of other things that may show up at closing, right? Maybe if there's a lien on the property, God forbid, uh, right? You have to clear all of that to make the title marketable. Yes. So you guys are correct. So, what kind of value do you bring to the table here? It works for you, it works for this guy to make an offer. So, your monthly mortgage, let's say you did your research, right? And you see that this person is actually paying 875, or you asked them directly and they said, I pay 875 in mortgage. I can't afford to keep doing that with the other property I'm going to move to. And your rent is around 1400, right? So that's actually what you researched and you found that that property would rent for. So you did a research and you found that rents in that area for those kind of properties, that kind of bedroom, bathroom, is around 1,400. And then you approached this guy and you said, well, I'm not going to buy conventionally. I'm going to buy using creative financing that would hopefully help the two of us. I can't go to the bank, so this works fine for me. Or I can go to the bank right now, and this works perfectly for me. So you decided that a lease option would be a great idea. So you want to buy this property with a lease option, and you're going to see how that solves the problem, right? So you made an offer. You said, I'm going to buy this property from you. I know that your monthly mortgage is 875. So if I pay you $1,000 monthly, it's gonna cover your mortgage, and you should be okay, and you still have some left over, right? Because the issue was covering that mortgage while having another property or paying towards another property on a monthly basis. So you said, I'm gonna pay you $1,000 every single month for 60 months, right? And I'm gonna buy this property at 110K, the same exact amount you want. However, this time around, there are no realtor fees to pay. And because I'm giving you 60 months, we don't need to worry about you not having equity, because at that point you owe less. Does that make sense? At that point you owe less. So I'm going to hold on to this property for 60 months. I'm going to be doing a lease with an option to buy. So that means I have the first rights to buy this property within 60 months. And my rights would expire after 60 months, of course, except I renew, right? So you're going to give me the first dip. I'm going to have an agreement to be the first to buy this property within 60 months, right? So whenever I'm ready within 60 months, I'm just going to go ahead and purchase this property. So I'm going to buy at 110,000. I'm going to give you exactly what you want. You're not going to have to pay two mortgages. You're not going to have to be a landlord. I'm going to take over. You're not going to have to be a landlord, right? and you're not going to need to worry about coming out of pocket to close. So you literally solve this person's entire problem. Properties off their hands. They're even making a small amount every month, and you're able to close pretty good without coming out of pockets. What does this do for you? What does this do for you? Are you going to cash flow on a monthly basis? So, what does a cash flow look like right now, guys? What are you guys saying? What are you calculating for cash flow? How much is the rent and how much are you paying them monthly? How much rent are you going to be getting from the tenants you install into the property? Ideas. If you're paying if your tenant pays 1400 in rent and you have to pay the seller $1,000 every month. Exactly right. Exactly. So Tony says I can rent it out for 1400 and make 400 a month, right? So you're making 400 a month on this property. You didn't even need to buy it. You didn't need to come up with down payments. You didn't need to go through screening. No one needed to check your W-2. No one needed to know your DTI or debt to income. No one needed any deep information from you. You were able to do this and make money on a property that you don't own yet, but you control this property, right? If you were calculating how much cash flow you're making the whole entire 60 months period, you can see that you're around 24,000 if you did not increase the rents during that period, right? Which is a lot of time to increase your rents, right? Okay, that's one idea you had. Okay. The lease option idea. Okay. So remember this idea, lease option. Now I'm going to go into the next one. The same seller, the same issues, the same problems, and you came up with a solution for yourself and for the seller. It works for you big time. It works for the seller perfectly. You guys, I have done these deals multiple times. The contracts are legal, right? The contracts are they're legal on your heart. You're gonna see sections where these things come in. But because it's not so popular doesn't mean that it's not allowed. It is a legal process. You can even go through an attorney to draft your contracts for you. Okay. The other idea you have is subject to. Okay. So you're buying this property at 110 is really what you're offering. You're offering, well, since you're over leveraged, you don't want to come up with money out of pocket at closing. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna buy this property at 110. Remember, you're not coming out of pocket. So you're buying this property at 110. That's your offer. Okay. Just what the seller wants. And then you offer that you're going to take over their mortgage payments. Okay. So you're not assuming the mortgage, you're taking over the payments of the mortgage. This is very different from lease options. So that's you're leasing with an option to buy. This, you're actually buying the property. It's like you own the property already. You own it, but the mortgage hasn't changed. So you're offering that you're going to buy this property 110,000 and you're going to pay 875 in mortgage every month. What does your cash flow look like right now? Your total mortgage PITI is 875. How much would you be making out of cash for a cash flow? How much? Who's calculating? Who is calculating? How much are you making in cash flow? So if you're rent, the rent you're going to be getting from the tenant is 1400, and you pay 875 in mortgage. How much do you have left? Any calculators around? Okay, sometimes your responses come in later, so I'm just going to move on so I don't have to wait too long. Thank you. It came in just at the same time that I was trying to display. So it's 26 525 exactly. You probably have a calculator with you, or you're pretty good at math, right? So 525 monthly. You're making 525 every month without buying this property with the banks. You didn't have to go to a bank to qualify for a mortgage. Do you see that? You're literally taking over this mortgage payment. You have bought the property. So in this case, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to take over this mortgage payments for a couple of months. I can maybe do 60 months again, because that's a sweet spot, really, where you kind of start to see some equity build up. So 60 months, I'm going to take over this payment, and I'm going to make money while I do that. So I'm helping you, and I'm also helping myself, a big deal, because I mean, I don't own, technically, I didn't have to come up with anything, and every month I'm making 525. What does your return on investment look like when you don't have to bring any money to the table? I'm curious, you guys know what your return on investment or your ROI looks like if you don't have to come up with any money? What is your ROI? Sometimes you guys do stocks and you're at 15% return on investment. Maybe you struck a home run at 40% return on investment. Maybe you did a couple of real estate deals and you're at 45%, 50% return on investment over time. Or even in the first year, you made your entire amounts back at 100%. Exactly. So you are at infinity ROI. And that's why creative financing is so good, because your return on investment is infinity, because you didn't have to bring any money to the table. Does that make sense? Does it make sense to make infinity, to be limitless, to make money out of nothing? So when you make money out of nothing, your return on investment is infinity, right? So that's exactly what this does for you, and it helps the seller a great deal. You can't even imagine how grateful the sellers are usually, especially when they don't even know that there was such an option that could bail them out of the situation. Hey, Willie, I see your contribution. Yes, and that is correct. Okay, so now let's talk about another. We did talk about lease options, and we did talk about um, subject to. Now we're going to talk about another. And as so boy says, to be honest with you, this is so interesting. God bless you for this information. You are more than welcome. And if you're not in our Facebook group, please join. Is the info? Is it Facebook? Is kind of blurry. I don't know if that's how it is everywhere. I see Facebook looking blurry. Let me know if you can see the slide clearly. So I'm going to talk about another method, another way to do a creative financing right here. Let's say the seller is a different guy. He wants to sell for cash. I want cash. I have to sell for cash. I don't have time to play. Give me cash. And he doesn't want to go sell with a realtor, because he says something like, oh, that's a ripoff. Why would they earn this over my property? I can find my own buyer. I don't have to pay 6%, because guys, 6% is a lot. It's a lot of money if you look at the total value of a property or how much it's been sold for. So whether you have equity or not, you're going to pay that 6%. Even if your equity is not even up to that, you'll have to come up with that 6% out of pocket, which doesn't work for a lot of people. But this guy actually doesn't even have a mortgage, but he wants to, or maybe he just wants to sell for cash, right? He wants a private sale. There might be a mortgage, there might not be. No realtor commissions. He wants private because maybe it's an inheritance. They don't just want to put they don't want to put the property on the market where everybody says, "Oh, I saw your house on Zillow." Or maybe they're so embarrassed because inside of the property is really bad. Like maybe there was a hoarder in there and everything is upside down. It can be very embarrassing. Or maybe they have like nosy neighbors that would be wondering why their property looks that way and why it's on the market, you guys. Anyone has a nosy neighbor. You know how it can be with nosy neighbors where they're watching your every move. So they don't want that to be on the market or for the whole world to know that this is going on, or maybe they're going through a divorce and they don't want anyone to know yet. So want it really private. They want to close as soon as possible. So maybe some people can be actually pressured for cash. They need to close quickly. 14 days. You already know that the banks cannot guarantee you a 14-day close. Most times it's impossible. There's a lot of paperwork that happens that needs that lengthy process, right? And then the value of this property is different. This time it's 150,000. So this property is valued at 150,000. They want to close as quickly as possible. They want a private sale. They don't want to pay no realtor commissions, and they want to sell for cash if possible. This property needs work. It needs some work. Okay. So you did your research and you found that this property would rent for 1,500 every month, and you saw that these people had paid $1,000 every month in mortgage, right? So they have a mortgage and they're paying $1,000 every single month. Now I want you guys to tell me, what do you think would be a great option for these folks? What would you offer them if you didn't have cash and they needed cash? They want cash and you don't have cash. What are you going to do? You don't want to go to the bank. You don't have cash. You just really want to work out something that's creative. What would you do? Okay. Maybe your response will come in later, but here is a great opportunity to wholesale. This is a great opportunity to wholesale. And what do you do with wholesaling? So you're gonna offer, well, they want you made your offer. It doesn't need work. Of course, if the property is worth 150, you need to do some work so it cannot sell at that price. It's gonna sell for significantly less, right? So you're offering, I'm gonna buy your property at $60,000. Okay, so that's what you're saying, and you're saying that you're gonna go ahead and assign, or you plan to go ahead and assign this property to another investor. So you got the property, you assign this property to another investor for 70K. You say, hey, investor, I don't want to do this deal. I don't want to fix it up, repair it, put on the market, and wait that long. I just want to be in and out of the deal. I did a great job negotiating with the seller. They were able to drop the price for me. I am at $60,000, but I'm not going to go ahead with the deal. I'm going to assign it to you if you want the deal. And trust me, there are a lot of investors who are looking for deals that are good, right? They want a sweet deals. If they're punching these numbers in and it's making sense already with the work that it needs, they assign it to another investor. How much are they making? So how much are you gonna make if you do this? So you're gonna check out with $10,000. You didn't have to come up with money out of pockets. You didn't have to go to the bank. You didn't have to do anything really, the rigorous processes with the banks, or even come up with money out of pockets. But you were able to make $10,000 on this property. Okay, by assigning it to another investor. And that's what we call wholesaling. Okay, so wholesaling is another great, nice, creative financing strategy. Okay, cool. And just like every other, like the other strategies, they are legal. You have contracts, you're assigning contracts. Your attorney is able to draft a contracts. Your turn, you go into closing just like it's done legally in buying a property, and you make your $10,000 within 30 days or less, right? Cool. Let's say we want to try another strategy with another seller. Okay, so this is another seller. The seller will sell at 150K. This seller is strong-headed. They will sell at 150. They have no doubts. I'm not going to sell for less. I'm going to sell at 150. The market value is 150. Maybe even the market value is like 140. they want to sell like 150. I want to max my investment. I have to be at 150,000. I am not in a hurry. I am not desperate. I don't care about your low ball offers. I don't have any mortgages. Look, I am an investor. Tony was saying, tell them to refinance and buy subject to. Okay, that's a great idea. You can definitely mix up different creative financing strategies. Okay, no mortgage. This is like maybe a typical investor that doesn't give a hoot about what you want to do. He just wants to make his money and he will wait for as long as he wants to make his money, right? So he has no mortgage. He doesn't want to bother much with the property. Maybe he has other investments. Okay. Or maybe they intentionally want to make more money. There are people like that. So you guys, have you seen subject to deals advertised? Maybe someone sent you a subject to deal. They advertise, oh, this property is subject to, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. Those are investors who are savvy. So some people intentionally want to do, I'm sorry, I wouldn't say subject to for this one. But yes, you see subject to advertised, right? And I'm going to tell you what this one is, even though it doesn't fall under subject to, right? So investors are savvy with subject to deals. They're also savvy with this particular one. But this guy really wants to make more money. And you found that this property would rent for 1400. Okay. So it's going to rent for 1400. What kind of strategy do you think would make sense for this guy? If you know that strategy, type it in the comments. Okay. So, what kind of strategy do you think will make sense? This property will rent for 1400. Yvonne, put your question. Martin, put your question in the comments. Let's see. Exactly, Tony. Tony got it right, right? Because I would definitely do seller financing as well. This guy's not in a hurry. I would go ahead and make a seller financing offer. Okay. So I'm going to buy it at $150,000. I will give you exactly what you want. You will sell at 150. I will buy at 150. As long as I get terms. I can buy at any amount you want me to buy at, as long as you give me terms. So I'm going to offer you 5% interest. And we found that to be at $805 every month. Guys, I'm going to share my screen with you. Let me share a Google page with you and see if that works out fine. I know sometimes with sharing it's kind of tricky. So I'm going to replace the screen with amortization calendar. Let's say you wanted to make a seller financing offer and you went on to Google and you're like amortization calculator, and then you found a lot of different options that came up. So I just go with the first option right here. And right here, remember our seller. I'm going to show you guys again where we're at. So our seller right here wanted, what did they want? They want 150,000, right? So they want us to pay 150. They're not in a hurry. So we want to make an offer of 150, but we want to see what 5% interest looks like first before we make that offer. So you're not just saying I'm going to pay 5%. Can I afford to pay you 5%, right? So the amortization schedule is very easy to find. You just need to go online and type in amortization schedule. And we're going to put in our 150 that we want to make. That's the offer we want to make. Okay, so 150. We'll always put in 30 years amortization. If you put in 40 years, it would even make you can try that. It would reduce the amount of monthly payments you're going to make. But it's just really what they use. If they were to give you a loan right now, they're going to put all of those numbers in here and tell you what your terms would look like. Right. So let's say we're at 5%, and then we calculate that. So our monthly schedule looks like this. So every month you're paying 723, right? 723. No. So I'm going to change this to 30 years, and I'm going to calculate that. So every month we're paying 805, which is what we have. So we found that if we offered the seller 150,000 with 5% interest, we'll be paying them $805 every month. Remember, this property is going to rent for 1400. So I'm going to go back to where we were before. I'm going to replace that right here to our slide. Okay, so this property rent for 1400 went ahead and did 5% interest, and we're going to give them 805 monthly. Okay, and we're going to do a balloon for 5 years. So we're going to say, okay, in 5 years' time, I should be ready to kind of get out of this loan. And by then, maybe I can switch it over to another kind of mortgage. And that's not hard to do. Over time, you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to do DSCR loans. You're going to be able to do other creative financing. But for now, you can get into this property and still cash flow. Guys, this seller at 5 years has made a lot of interest, way more than the 150 that they were looking to get. At the end, do you know how much in interest you guys are paying to the bank? That's what this guy is going to earn. So this guy is going to be the bank. But it works for you because your monthly interest is low and you're making a lot of cash flow. By the time you subtract, you're giving them what they want and more, and you are making cash flow every month without going to the bank, without applying for financing, without being on a queue, without looking at your debt to income ratio. Maybe you earn a very low income. You don't even need that to qualify, right? You don't need your income. So, what is your cash flow looking like? Definitely calculate that. Imagine if you could do a bunch of properties like this. If you did five, what's 5 times 5? 2,500 every month. What would 2,500 every month look like? What would 5,000 every month look like? What would 10,000 extra every month look like if you were doing this? And if you look back in 5 years, what would your portfolio look like? Right? So that is the secret of wealth building, guys. That is the secret. And there are a ton of other creative strategies to look at or to explore in your journey as a real estate investor. Okay. So I know we did a few stuff here. There is a resource for us tonight, you guys, if you want your creative financing deal blueprints, type resource in the comments, and that's really just going to show you different strategies you can use for different purposes. So if this is your situation and that's your situation, what should you go for? So that's the resource for tonight. So type resource in the comments and you're going to get that resource. Meg is going to send that to you. Remember to check your inbox for that resource. Okay, remember to check your inbox for that resource. Okay, sometimes it goes into spam too. So be very careful with spam. You can't even see a notification except you check the spam by yourself, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on Instagram. So type resource in the comments and we'll get that over to you. Also, I have to tell you about our coaching program. Definitely, if you're sick and tired of not knowing how to start, and maybe you've been on the sidelines for many years and you're missing out on things like cash flow. Maybe you're stuck in a cycle that controls your time freedom. Okay. You're working hard, right? Yes, you're working hard. Maybe even harder than most people. Yet every month it feels like your money disappears. You're paying rent, you're paying bills, you're paying taxes. You're not able to implement any strategy. You have very little left to build anything for yourself. So you've been here in this space and you see people talk about real estate. You've watched the success stories from Acquire Real Estate here as well, because we do have a bunch of success stories. But something inside of you says that's not for people like you. And that's a lie, because maybe you didn't grow up around things like this. You didn't have anyone showing you how to build wealth, and it's scary. That's the exact reason we created the coaching program, to walk you through step by step. So you don't need to keep watching YouTube videos at 2 a.m. hoping something finally clicks. As you can tell from the different examples today, you don't need six figures to buy real estate, so to buy properties. Also, you don't need a real estate license. We don't do realtor thingies in here, right? So we're real estate investors, we're buying properties. So if you're tired of doing all of that and you just want to cut the chase and forge ahead, type coaching in the comments and I will have a conversation with you. Meg will help you schedule, she'll help schedule you for that Please remember to check your inboxes and spam. Also, if you're looking to get the resources shared tonight. Okay, so type coaching in the comments for coaching and type resources in the comments for resources, or resource in the comments for resources, or type both. We have come to the end of this interesting session. There's a lot more to unravel and to learn. So please say good night to everyone in the comments. I hope you had got value. If you got value, also type value in the comments. If you got value, and say good night to everyone in the comments. And yes, I'll just say good night, everyone, and I'll catch you later. Have a great night. Bye.